All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Live from Cleveland at Home today. This is our first time we've had a video component and another roundtable discussion for you since a couple of weeks ago. So today we're here with Matt and Garrett from Cleveland Versus, and you'll probably recognize them from some other projects that they've worked on. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit more just about you and how you kind of relate to Cleveland Versus and the Cleveland music scene in general?
Go ahead, Garrett. Sure. Okay, I'll start. I'm Garrett. I play piano and I sing in the Modern Electric. And just recently, we've kind of launched this new nonprofit with Modern Electric and some other people on our board that are not in bands, but they're very interested in helping out the Cleveland music scene. So go ahead, Matt.
I'm Matt. I play bass and drums in the Modern Electric, and I also play in Ohio Civil Power on the drums, and I play in John's Little Sister on the drums. So, you know, I try and give a little love to all the genres and all the bands.
Awesome. And guys, tell me a little bit more about Cleveland Versus. This has been a kind of a passion project for both of you for a little while. So kind of what is the mission of Cleveland Versus for people who aren't familiar?
Well, okay, so yeah, we're a fully functioning nonprofit, and what we do is we want to provide an outlet for local musicians to benefit others, because a lot of the time there's causes we care about and we want to invest in, but we might not have the money or monetary funds to donate to things like that. And, you know, we think it's important that we are creators and musicians, and that is valuable, the stuff we create in art. So we wanted to use our talents rather than other people. That's like kind of what Cleveland Versus facilitates.
And I like the fact that because the Cleveland music scene is so tight knit and small, like for myself in particular, I'm in 3 different bands, and it's a really great way to work together, because I think in some other cities it seems more of like a competition within the music scene, and here it's more familial, and we're kind of all in it together. So it is fun to just kind of work together to make a little bit of change.
Yeah.
Right.
So the name itself is Cleveland Versus, and I've misspelled this myself in talking with Isaac and things like that, but it's Verses. So it's kind of this double entendre, right? It's Cleveland Versus, whatever, whatever kind of charity that thing you're trying to support, right? Like taking on, these different things. But then also having this double entendre with like your songs and things like that. So who kind of came up with that name, and did the name kind of come first, or did your mission kind of come first?
I think the mission came first, and we wanted to. For a while, it was like Cleveland takes on this, like you just said, takes on, and we thought it was really cool that we could use the word versus in a different way, where it's, the lyrical verses, but also Cleveland versus this issue or this problem. So, it's the cool thing I should mention is that right now this year we're focused on Cleveland versus COVID-19, and we've been raising money to help small businesses, more specifically venue employees that kind of fell through the cracks for the unemployment and the stimulus checks and all that. We're trying to raise money for them, and as well as local performers. So we're Cleveland versus COVID-19 this year, but maybe next year or the year after we'll be Cleveland versus a different issue. We'll take on something else. So that's the kind of a neat way we set up ourselves as a nonprofit.
And in the past, have you selected other charities to help out to take on other issues as well? How long has Cleveland Versus been kind of going in the capacity that you have it as now?
Well, actually, this is kind of our inaugural. Sorry. Yeah, this is our first year. The first thing we're doing is Cleveland versus COVID-19. We've been set up for the year prior, but we were just kind of getting our game plan together, how we could involve the most amount of people and getting how we're going to raise money together, our fundraising plan. But yeah, so we kind of launched and kicked off this year with Cleveland versus COVID-19. And I hope at the end of the year, we haven't talked to the board specifically about this process, but I think what we're going to do is put it up for a vote to the public on what our next issue we're tackling, something local in Cleveland that people are struggling with. Maybe it's heroin addiction or sexual harassment or things like that. So yeah, as long as people are staying tuned to what we're doing, they can have a voice and join in on what we raise money for. And
the types of things that you're raising money for, do you feel like they all are going to kind of have, they're kind of all related to like the Cleveland music scene a little bit? I mean, some of the things, obviously this year, it's very related. And so not only are you musicians trying to raise money for other musicians or other venue employees, right? And they're very intertwined, but perhaps in the future they might not be as intertwined. So do you always see the charity that you're working with having to do with the music scene as well as just being supported by musicians?
I think the angle in particular is just focusing on the community. This year it just happens to affect the music industry very largely because it's kind of the last domino to fall as far as like opening up venues and getting musicians back to work and employees back to work and bartenders back to work. And so it just kind of so happened to line up that way. But I think, it's really important that we're just reaching out to the community and for whatever its needs are.
Gotcha. And so tell me a little bit about how this got started. Was Garrett like this your idea and you reached out to the other guys in the band and said like, hey, let's get this going? Like, tell me a little bit about how this really started.
I kind of had this idea that I would love to have an album, like a compilation album of a bunch of local bands doing a cover of a specific artist. I thought that would be cool to kind of have a snapshot of like the Cleveland sound in 2020 and then do it again in 2022 and just continue to have this snapshot of what the sound is like in Cleveland. I was describing this idea to a couple of my friends who had background in nonprofit. That's what they studied in school, and they thought like this is a great idea. Why don't we combine our expertise areas and use that compilation that you create to raise money for people in need? So that's kind of how it was all born. And those friends that I mentioned are the other board members. Holden Lawrence from the Modern Electric. He has solo work as well. He's the other board member that's from Modern Electric, and Matt's the head designer, of course, at the whole nonprofit.
Very awesome. And who are some of the other like members of your board as well who's helping to really support this project? Their names are Betsy Whitus. She's the one who has studied nonprofits, and she's worked nonprofit areas of some colleges around town. And then Dan Krancevic is kind of our financial wizard guy, and he helped us with a lot of the things that we had no idea about with the IRS. It's kind of daunting to try and start a nonprofit because there's so many boxes you have to check off and hoops you have to jump through, but he guided us through all that process. That's amazing. It sounds like it's been a big learning process also for you guys. So I'm happy that you've added to your skill set here a little bit as well. Sure, yeah. One of those really cool things that you were kind of talking to me about earlier, and perhaps that this was something that maybe one of the board members had incorporated, is how this nonprofit is really kind of special because you're doing responsive grant making. So just like the tagline words for this idea that you've already kind of described, but I've never personally realized that nonprofits could operate like that. I think we think of nonprofits as being very stagnant and having like one mission. And it's awesome to be able to look at different things and choose different things to collectively work on. So, who kind of came up with that, or as you were discussing ways for this nonprofit to work, how was that reached upon that this would be the best way to do it?
That was Betsy's idea. She's the one who had the background in nonprofits. And I didn't know about responsive grant making either. I thought it was a great idea because, if we raise money for something continuously, it's a good thing to do that because your branding is very specific in someone's mind. But we just thought it was such a cool idea with our name and all the things that we care about in Cleveland. Just amongst the board members, it was hard to decide on the one thing to raise money for. So it was brought up to our attention that there's such thing as responsive grant making. So
awesome. And so for this year, Cleveland versus COVID-19, you guys are specifically working with Cleveland Rocks, past, future, present. Tell me a little bit about that relationship and how that got kickstarted and how you found that nonprofit to support.
Sure. We knew that we had a great idea on how to raise the money and get the Cleveland music scene involved, but we weren't really prepared to take on the vetting process of doling out the money to people individually. That's a whole nother half that we don't have the volunteers for at the moment. So we were kind of looking for another charity, another nonprofit to partner with that already had that system in place. And when I heard that Cindy had directed towards venue employees and local performers, it was the match made in heaven. We really wanted to help out venues like the Drog Shop. So it was just perfect that she had already had something in place that could handle that.
And as the Modern Electric too, you guys have had a really great relationship, obviously, with all of these venues in the past, as well as Beachland. So I'm sure that they were, happy to have you on board for this one as well. How do you kind of see yourselves working? It's so funny because it's a new project and it's a new avenue for you guys to be taking, but you still are very much kind of working together still as the Modern Electric, even in this new capacity, which is interesting. Like, it's like using your band specifically for like social change also. You see this project operating like hand in hand with the band that you already have, or would you like this to eventually be kind of like separated from the Modern Electric?
Personally, I think it would be pretty to keep this hand in hand, like you said. We've never really released covers before under the Modern Electric. We've always just done original music, and this kind of provided a really good outlet to, you don't have to put this cover on your album and make it a part of your, artistic statement of what your sound is, but it's an outlet to do something from released music, and it's maybe a little less serious than being on an album for me. I don't know, Matt, do you have anything to add?
I think it's already hard enough to get 4 guys or girls together and get along. It's like being in a relationship with 4 different people. And so when you have a strong bond between 4 different members of the band, why not exploit that and use it for a bunch of other things? Like, we already know how to communicate with each other musically, and like being in an independent band, you do have to work as a small business or a nonprofit or whatever. So we already have the tools and the communication and the friendship to work together successfully. So I think a lot of other bands could definitely do this as well, and use their band. We all come from different points of view. Holden comes from one point of view. I come from an artistic point of view. Garrett comes from more of a communication point of view. And Mike is a super smart, like, statistical guy. We're able kind of pull together our gifts or whatever to make a difference.
Yeah. And I definitely want to talk about that compilation in just a couple of minutes. But one of the other ways that you've been raising money is also by kind of getting donations and doing kind of raffling off, doing these auctions of other bands' merchandise, signed merchandise, artwork from the area. So kind of talk to me a little bit about that. That seems to be like the other way that you are raising funds to kind of kickstart doing some of the work on this album. So maybe tell me a few people who you reached out to in order to get that fundraising going. Garrett, if you reached out to specific people, and Matt, if you reached out to specific people, tell me a little bit about that process as well.
Sure. Yeah. That whole that it's a two-part process on how we raise money. Exactly like you said, we're going to raise money through the compilation, but also through this online marketplace where it's kind of just like a place where bands can put some cool memorabilia that they can't really fans can't find on their websites normally. Like if you're going to donate maybe some vinyl, like Mr. Gnome donated some vinyl and they made sure it was all signed, which was very cool. Dan Maraldi had a great idea where he signed some CDs, but he also hand wrote some lyrics on the cover. We just got in, Madeline Finn is donating just a personalized song, which is pretty awesome. She's going to write a song for somebody, whoever purchases that. And all the funds, everything in the marketplace is donated, and then every dollar spent on these items goes right to the cause. It doesn't, it doesn't change hands and get the pie taken away. We're hoping to have some cool, neat stuff, a little out of the box stuff. Maybe the Modern Electrical start by doing something weird, but like I don't know if there's like the sweaty undershirt you wore on a whole tour, and it's, you sign it and put it up on this marketplace. We're looking for weird stuff you can't get anywhere else.
Are you guys
dirt shirt?
Yeah.
You guys have always been really good at marketing. I feel like every year for your Christmas shows and everything, you always come up with like cool merch. And so I definitely see this idea being like very, not similar, but also out of the box in the same way. And Matt, I know you're, you design for Cleveland Clothing Company, and you do a lot of work with local artists here in Cleveland. So there was also some like original artwork. Can you tell me a little bit more too about some of the musicians also who are artists that donated prints or artwork?
Well, I know Jen is also an artist, and she's really talented. Garrett, I'm not sure if she donated did she donate a print or
yeah.
She
has a print in there.
So Jenna Fournier from Knights and also Kid Tiger. Okay.
And as far as like when we decide to release the full album cover, we'll look at artists in the community to do the album artwork and stuff like that. I did the artwork for the single cover, but we're gonna take submissions and see.
Cool. And so let's talk a little. Then let's kind of transition to this compilation. So tell me a little bit more about the idea behind the compilation. We already kind of covered that it's covers. It's a covers compilation, and local bands are to it. Modern Electric has their single out first now. So tell me a little bit more about your single first.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we just wanted to kickstart the whole cover idea, and we put out our single. It was kind of to show bands like, make it sound like yourself and not really like a Bob Dylan song. And we just wanted to put it out there to kind of announce the Beat Cleveland verses publicly too. But we had been playing that song live for a long time. And so we thought it would be awesome to record it, and this was the perfect way to release it to help others. It kind of helped us decide that the first artist we would cover would be Bob Dylan. It's I think he's such a great artist to start with on these compilations because he's one of the most covered artists of all time. I mean, there's so many famous covers, like Jimi Hendrix did All Along the Watchtower, and it's just he's an easy one to kind of start with. Especially, I should mention, because once we announced that we were taking artist submissions, everybody was kind of in lockdown in their houses and they couldn't get to recording studios. Mm-hmm. And Bob Dylan kind of lends himself to just maybe recording something with an acoustic guitar and a voice in a home stall. So I think that worked out well too. But once we switch our gears from Cleveland versus COVID-19 to something else, I think we'll switch the artist as well, which would probably be up to public vote as well. So
cool. And so what was the song that you guys recorded? And because I don't think you mentioned that for everybody if they don't know.
Matt, do you want to talk about it?
I think I know the name of it. I don't even know the name of the song. So Queen Jane, approximately.
Awesome.
I think it's kind of a deep cut. Like,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's off of Highway 61 Revisited. We should mention, I got to mention that Lava Room Recording really helped us out with that. They heard what we were doing, and they were so behind it that they recorded that and mixed it for free for us, which was incredible. What a generous donation. We put them on our website as one of our sponsors now because it was such a huge donation to the cause.
That is awesome. And did you decide to do that then? So, like, kind of during quarantine, like, when did you guys finally get in to record that with them?
We recorded that, I think, a few months prior to launching Cleveland Versus. So we already kind of knew that we wanted Bob Dylan to be the first artist, and it just worked out that he is an acoustic artist, so people in lockdown could have a chance to do home recordings if they wanted. Very
cool. And as far as that song and playing that live during your sets, what does that song mean to you, and why did you guys choose that one to play live? Why did that become a quick favorite for Modern Electric?
I don't know. I don't know why we stumbled across it. I think I always wanted to cover Like a Rolling Stone, but the amount of verses in that song is pretty crazy. It's an 8 or 9 minute song. So I was like, okay, well, we won't do that one, but what's another Bob Dylan song that I love? And I connected with the lyric one. Won't You Come See Me, Queen Jane? It kind of relates, to this lockdown we've been in. We've been so apart physically. When you hear that lyric repeat, "Won't you come see me?" I mean, it kind of with the times too, which was a happy accident.
Yeah, no, that's true. It has this added longing to it in that sense. Yeah. Did you find that other bands that you asked to participate in this, like, also kind of chose songs that I don't know, spoke to them or spoke to the moment that we're in as well, or were they just favorites?
Actually, a lot of these bands that have signed on, I think it's really cool that they're picking deep cuts. Some Bob Dylan songs I definitely haven't even heard of are in the works being recorded right now by these other bands, which I thought was great. I thought it would be like, all right, we're all going to do Rolling Stone and fight over it, but nobody even picked that song. So
there you go. Yeah. You would have had to pick Straws, and we're not allowed to be that close. A good thing that's not the case,
Right.
So who are some of the other bands that are going to be included on this compilation? And were there any bands that you kind of went after, like that you really wanted them to submit and be a part of the compilation?
Yeah, I really wanted to see if Welshly Arms would be a part of it. They're inspiration to a lot of us Cleveland bands because of all the success they've had. And once I reached out to Sam, he was really into the idea. He's said he's looking through the archives for some cool merch to give us, and he's discussing with the band and his well, he's in a position where he has to discuss with his label the way that they can legally submit a cover to this, donate the cover to this compilation. So he's working on that, which we were so excited that he was even considering working on it. We reached out to a few, like Beach Staff, actually, we just got today signed board to do a song, and we're huge fans of Beach Staff. Plenty of other ones too. There's Dan Maraldi, who is doing a song called Eskimo, or Mighty Quinn the Eskimo. And that's one I had never heard of. So he picked a really deep cut, which was cool. Matt, do you know anything about, is John's little sister working on their cover?
I'm not sure which song she picked yet. I know that I'm excited. Whatever Jess picks is going to be great. She's got such a beautiful voice.
Very cool. This really ended up being like extremely cooperative and just such a collaboration amongst a lot of different artists in Cleveland, which is awesome. Do you have a projected date or like a goal for when these bands are gonna kind of get all this together so that you can release it as a full album?
Yeah, we kept the submission window open until July 15th. And if a couple bands are a little late on that, like a week late, I think we have the leeway there because we haven't announced a release date of the album officially. And since this is the first time we're releasing an album of all covers, we have to see with the mechanical licensing how long that process is getting Bob Dylan's permission basically in the background, how long that'll take before we can put it out on Spotify. But I know with our song, when we released a single, Queen Jane Approximately, it took about 2 weeks to get the thumbs up from Bob Dylan. We hired a company called Sounddrop, and which is awesome. If anybody's looking to release covers, they will help you get the mechanical licenses. Sounddrop without two D's in the name. But so we aren't sure, but we definitely want this album to come out this year before winter, before the Christmas time, so that it's available around Christmas. But that's another thing I should mention. We aren't sure yet if we're going to be releasing this physically. Rachel, you have a lot of discussions with bands in the local area. What do you feel about like people coming out with CDs anymore? Is that even a thing, or?
I think that this would depend on what you think if you think you want to put it out around Christmas or something and you think people are going to be purchasing it as a gift, I think then people want that kind of like physicality of something to give to somebody else, and it doesn't do the same way to hand them the link to the Bandcamp download on a little piece of paper, right? But I think as a fundraising vehicle, it might not be as necessary, right? So if you're trying to get it out quickly for impact and a way that most people possible can download it from anywhere they're at, anywhere they live, right? Then perhaps something like Bandcamp where you donate for the whole album works best. And I've seen a lot of people doing things like that. As far as when they're fundraising, I know there was, I think, a compilation that came out like out of Philly, or when, like Bernie Sanders was still in the run for being the Democratic candidate. They, a bunch of bands did a big compilation album there, and they just were very adamant about, we're not going to let this out anywhere except for if you purchase this download. So. It's up to you. It's up to you guys. But I think as a fundraising component, it might not be necessary. And also, if you want, the biggest return on just the money that you already put into recording these songs and getting them, like licensed and everything, right? Who needs to be bogged down with another, $2 per CD and shipping and
that's a good point. Maybe we'll get, fingers crossed, maybe some angel will sponsor us and just print some vinyl for free or something. That would be cool, but as a donation to the cause. But yeah, our our long-term goal is to just have all download money and streaming money, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Music, all that would go to the cause indefinitely.
Very cool. And then so for right now, you said you're still taking submissions for these Bob Dylan songs from local bands, right? So Cleveland-based bands.
Yes.
And where can they submit to if people are watching this and are really interested and want to be a part of the compilation?
All the information and the submission would be at clevelandversus.org/submit. And it'll have a list of all the songs that are already taken, so we aren't fighting for songs. And any details about the format we need the song in.
Do you is there like any kind of cutoff? Like, are you going to be like, oh, all right, we have, 19 songs or 15 songs, that seems good, or or is it kind of like an open call? If everything sounds great, you'll take it all? Or
yeah, if as long as the quality is up to recording quality that matches kind of everything else that's being submitted, then we don't care if it's 30 or 40 songs. I think that would be great because it's all streams and downloads going for the cause. So that might be another reason why we don't go physical with this, because how do you fit vinyl? But
it's a quadruple LP.
Yeah.
But like Matt might have fun designing that, so.
Oh yeah, it'd be a formatting nightmare or a layout nightmare.
And so, the other question I really have too, because I personally have not had to do this, and there's probably other bands out there that have not really thought about this much either. Can you tell me like a little bit more about this process of getting things like A-okayed by Bob Dylan's, representations that work? That's such an interest. Who is just a total nerd about like this kind of like music law stuff. How does that work?
Well, it's called a mechanical license, and that means it's something, it's allowing you to reproduce that composition by Bob Dylan on a recording. And in the old days, up until probably a couple of years ago, you had to get in contact with his publishing company. And although it was easy to find who the publisher was, there's a search on Harry Fox Agency's website. You could find that. It would be pretty hard to get a response from them. I mean, there's bands on huge labels that are reaching out, and they're probably first priority. So I was looking around, and I knew that this company called CD Baby is how a lot of bands put their music out on Spotify. It kind of is the middleman between independent bands and streaming services. And they had a way for you to do a single cover, and they would handle the mechanical negotiations for you, and which was great. And a lot of bands used that. But when we were discussing doing a full album with maybe 30 or 40 songs, CD Baby really didn't have a way to cover all of that. So that's where, like I mentioned, this other company, Sounddrop, came in. They made this entire idea possible because for a very low price, actually, it's $10 per song. They handle it for you. They find the publisher. They get the permission. On the back end, they will take their percentage for doing the work, which is fine. But the upfront is really cheap, $10, which makes it accessible to anyone who wants to put out an album full of covers.
For sure. Awesome. That's really interesting. I'm happy that you indulged me behind the scenes of that. That's really kind of cool. And so ultimately, we're doing all Bob Dylan covers right now from local Cleveland bands to benefit local musicians as well as venue employees through Cleveland Rocks, past, present, and future. Just as a recap to maybe those who might have just tuned in. And in the future, you can choose some other organizations to work with because of the responsive grant making that Cleveland Versus is doing. If people want to find more information about Cleveland Versus, where can they go to get this information or find out how to submit even like merchandise and, or, you know, not merch, but, you know, like some of that exclusive fundraising merch that we kind of talked about.
Yeah. So our website's clevelandversus.org, and if you want to submit cool memorabilia or Bob Dylan cover, you would just go to clevelandversus.org/submit. If you want to find out more of what our mission is and stay involved, it would be clevelandversus.org/mission. We put up an email newsletter subscription. So I think that would be the best way to keep involved. And, you know, maybe one of your favorite bands that you weren't a part of it before joins on and puts up, you know, a guitar in the online marketplace, a signed guitar. And, you know, that's the best way to keep all that stuff.
And how are you structuring those types of, you know, the memorabilia buying as a fundraising tool? You know, is it like an auction, or do these things have like set prices on them? How have you been fundraising for these items specifically?
We're doing just set prices for now. Everything has been, you know, if it's vinyl, we kind of keep it at the same price across the board. If it's a T-shirt, it's the same price across the board. I could see us maybe doing auctioning if we get a really large item, like maybe a guitar, a signed guitar, or a, you know, piano. I don't know what it would be, but
the dirt shirt, which is really priceless.
Yeah, my dirt shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, if anybody wants to donate their car, that might be more of an auction style. But yeah, for now we're
car to Cars for Kids.
Yeah.
I would participate in the auction for Wellesley Arms as a tour van or tour bus,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, we'll make a bid too.
Yeah. So that is cool, and that stuff as you get it is all listed on your Facebook page as well as the website, or
it's all at the homepage of clevelandversus.org. That's where you can browse everything and see if your favorite band is listed anything. I think it'd be cool if people would like to get involved and they wanted to bands themselves and say, hey, there's this charity, and we'd you know, if you have something cool, we'd really want to buy it or donate by supporting. If you wanted to donate, you know, one of your guitars or cars or anything.
Yeah, very, very cool. And then if people are interested in hearing the first single off of this album, which is The Modern Electric covering Bob Dylan, where can they go to hear that single track to listen? Like, where would it help you the most right now if they listened to it?
I think since all the streaming money goes toward our cause, streaming would be good on Spotify, Apple, Amazon. If you download, definitely more money, because I think we get $1 per download rather than a few cents per stream. So if you wanted to go to iTunes and download it, that would be helpful too. But it's on all the major players when it comes to digital music consumption.
And tell me one more time again what the name of that single is, because it wasn't one that I was familiar with either.
Okay, yeah, it's the song Queen Jane Approximately, and it's off of Dylan's album called Highway 61 Revisited.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And then I guess my other question for you guys is, well, so Matt, all of your design work for this has been really, really awesome so far as the single image, you know, like the fake, you know, the fake cover art, right? And as well as just like the logo and everything for Cleveland Versus. Do you ever foresee getting like merch and doing merch sales for fundraising right now?
Yeah, we have some merch available right now on our website.
Ooh. Okay, perfect.
With the logo and stuff like that. And I think the goal is to come out with as this train gets rolling, get a little bit more experimental, a little bit more weird, kind of gauge interest in what is going to be the best way to raise money.
For sure. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, oh yeah, and then I wanted to ask too, I know they said, you know, in the future you would love to put it kind of up for a vote and like see what was the most needed thing to be raising money for, maybe in the coming years and coming time. But is there any are there any organizations that you really like in Cleveland that are kind of helping people? And would there be any organization that you personally would really like to work with maybe in the future?
Well, we could each answer individually, Matt, but
Mm-hmm.
I would go for, I think it would be cool to have Cleveland versus the heroin epidemic. And I think it would be cool to raise money to support. There's two organizations I kind of found in that area that are doing great work. One's called The Land, which is awesome, but I think it's only for males for heroin addiction recovery. And so if we were to go that route, we'd also want to support the Women's Recovery Center out of Cleveland, which is doing awesome stuff for addiction recovery of all types. So that's something I would be into, but I would like to put up for a vote to see what Cleveland sees as the biggest issue in our community.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, right now, I'm into charities about criminal justice reform, because in Cleveland, it is a nightmare, especially after re-listening to the Serial podcast, the third season, in light of recent events. It's just like it's hard to hear about your city that way, and it kind of breaks my heart. And I'm looking for some good charities. I mean, feel free to message me on Instagram or whatever. I'm still looking around, and I want to make the right decision. But yeah.
That's a great answer. I also had listened to that season of Serial, and just like that was really moving work. And I feel like, yeah, NPR was really on the pulse of what was going on here even before like we knew what was going on in Cleveland too. So very, very, very true. Both of those things are great charities. So, is this something that you can see kind of renewing itself every year? Is this something that like you really actively want to be making a effort with kind of year round every year for as long as you can?
Yeah, for me, that's the goal. I think it'd be cool. And that's another way for that initial spark of the idea is to have a snapshot that come up in the Cleveland music scene and continue to just record them and have a snapshot of that. And continue to help different areas that, I'm sure once we put it up for vote, we'll come across things that I didn't even know were huge problems in Cleveland, which I'm excited about. I just want to be informed and be able to help the people who support us as artists in the Cleveland music scene for the past, I don't know how long have we been doing this, Matt, in the Modern Electric. I mean, probably now, but
I think it's more.
And where can people also Modern Electric?
Oh yeah, we're on all the social medias. We're on Spot and Facebook and Instagram, but our website's themodernelectric.com. Yeah, MySpace page. That's the real insider look.
Our GeoCities page is lit.
Well, I want to thank both of you so much for talking to us today and letting me know a little bit more about Cleveland Versus, because this is something that's still pretty new and also kind of like a phoenix, like ever changing and kind of morphing. And I'm happy that this will also have a life, hopefully after this pandemic is over too. So that's
right.
Awesome. We'll post links to everything so that people know where they can go to get more information about Cleveland Versus, as well as where they can listen to the album when it does come out, and where you can hear the Modern Electric single right now. And I thank you both so much for joining us on this live discussion tonight.
Thank you. Thanks so much for spreading.
Thank you. And then as a reminder to everybody, if you missed out on some of this interview, you can go back and re-listen. This whole conversation, the video component and everything will be archived on our page, facebook.com/live from Cleveland Radio. And we'll also be airing an edited interview with Matt and Garrett on Thursday from 10 to 11 p.m. on WRUW-FM. So you can stream that on our website, wruw.org, or also from our just terrestrial radio on 91.1 FM. And we will also play your song then as well, and perhaps also play a little Bob Dylan just to celebrate as well on the show. So you can tune in then to also hear the song live on the radio. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much,
guys.
Rachel.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.